Well, in his Independence Day broadcast earlier today, President Bola Tinubu reiterated his administration's commitment to enhancing the country's security and ensuring the nation's economy experiences improved growth and performance. To a lot of Nigerians, President Tinubu couldn't have done a better job of hitting the bullseye by intentionally highlighting devastating effects of insecurity on contemporary Nigeria's aspiration to economic progress. Successive governments, civilian or military, have also had to make changes or embark on various reset initiatives after every disruption to the country's economy, including the 2.5-year civil conflict, which practically wiped out the gains of pre-independence. And of course, joining us now to look at the changes and challenges in Nigeria's economy in the last 65 years is Dele Oye, a former president of Nigeria Chamber of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture, and a one-time president of Organized Private Sector. Good to have you with us, sir.
Thank you very much.
All right, sir. So between 1999 and currently, during the transition to democracy, Nigeria experienced some growth in telecoms, oil and banking, but corruption and poor infrastructure is still an issue. So how would you assess this narrative and how significant to the country at 65 years?
Well, I want to start first by saying congratulations, Nigeria. Happy independence. Being together itself is an achievement, and to be together amicably and peacefully. Well, like you rightly said, even right in from the 1960s, Nigeria had a relatively wealthy country, based essentially on very functional civil service and huge export based on agric production. And indeed, most of the regions then, they had very significant niche where they all competed and did several things to grow the economy. But in the early 70s, we had the Dutch disease, the oil weight, which meant that we left most of this agricultural-based economy, and we all went for rent-seeking. There was a huge decline in almost every sector. The Obasanjo regime tried to do some level of reforms, and I also want to mention that part of the issue was issue of governance. There was a lot of destruction through military rule, which meant that we could not plan for too long, and we have to be doing almost on a year-to-year basis planning. So there was no room for significant long-term planning. Now with the reforms, telecoms and everything naturally brought production back to the economy. But we also realized that over the time, because of poor governance, corruption, and lack of effective functional civil service to ensure that they provide relative policies that were long-term in focus, we were not able to sustain most of those gains. And that is how this government came in, where we're almost in a situation in 2023, May, where we're virtually living on subsidy almost on every direction. And that was where the current government came in with its fiscal reforms. And like we're happy today, we are seeing, even though those of us in the private sector then, we're actually in a shouting game telling the government that the bonds or most of the policies, the punishment were on the private sector. And especially the issue of what was recovered from the liberation of the oil and gas sector, which made that government had more receipts without having to subsidize the cost of PMS.
Well,
and the central bank naturally had been very satisfied in having what you call a very tight fiscal policy, monetary policy. And what they had meant is that they had been borrowing at very high cost, while the public sector had to take most of the gains from the reforms.
Well, Dylan, it's always great to have you here. Apologies for the interruption. We've overexhausted our time. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Dele Oye, former president of the Organized Private Sector.